It's no secret that Biden has been strongly advocating for the all-electric transition of the automotive industry, and now it looks like the time to enact EPA's proposal has come. The administration believes this is going to speed up the EV transition and help achieve the goal of making two-thirds of new vehicles all-electric by 2032. But what about legacy car makers? Can they survive this fast-paced switch to electric cars? There are at least 5 reasons why we think that Biden could easily drive legacy automakers to disaster with this crazy acceleration of EV transition. Number 5. US market lags behind. The main reason why the current administration is pushing EVs so hard is because America lags behind other key automotive markets, such as Europe and China. In these parts of the world, EV adoption started much earlier, so car makers had more time to slowly adapt to the new challenges that come with the production of battery electric vehicles. Just look at the numbers and you'll see that almost 1/3 of new vehicles sold in January were EVs or plug-in hybrids in China, while some European countries like Norway mark even better results. On the other hand, the landscape of the US car market is completely different. EVs take around 7% of the new car market in the US, and the majority of that percentage goes on Tesla. The Austin-based electric car maker controls more than half of the EV market, while the situation among American legacy car makers is completely different. While Tesla sold way over 500,000 vehicles last year, Ford and GM were good for a little bit over 70,000 each, meaning that each company has a modest 4% share of the US EV market. Things are even worse in the case of Stellantis, a conglomerate that owns American companies like Chrysler, Jeep, Dodge, etc. This company hasn't released an EV in North America yet, though we have to say that 8 battery electric vehicles are planned to arrive by the end of this year. In any case, things are pretty clear here. A rapid jump from 7% to 67% market share in just 8 years is pretty much impossible, especially if we consider that the legacy car makers are facing financial difficulties even with the current pretty modest number of EVs produced. Even at this volume, legacy car makers are forced to postpone their EV investments because they're losing money on every EV they sell. Number 4. Pickup trucks are the key. If you look at the EPA proposal that Biden's administration plans to enact next month, the main goal is to set much higher fuel economy standards. By 2032, that number is expected to go up to 58 miles per gallon by raising requirements by 2% per year for passenger cars and 4% for pickup trucks. That would probably sound achievable in some other part of the world, but in America? No. Because this market is pretty specific, as it's pretty much all about pickup trucks and large SUVs, which are vehicles with the lowest MPG ratings of all. The industry average is around 27 miles per gallon, but American car makers are way below average because they're mostly relying on the production of large vehicles. 59% of all Ford models sold in the last years were mid-size and full-size pickups. In Chevy's case, that's 46%. On the other hand, 77% of Stellantis sales last year were reserved for pickups and SUVs. This means that American legacy automakers will soon have to push all-electric pickups even harder, something that they haven't been particularly successful so far. Ford managed to sell a decent number of all-electric F-150 Lightnings, but the demand started to cool down. Also, the Blue Oval Company has been losing $36,000 on every Lightning it sold last year, which led to the only rational decision to cut down production by half. On the other hand, GM managed to sell just a few hundred of its all-electric pickups and is now delaying further production, while Stellantis hasn't even released the all-electric Ram 1500 yet. So the most probable outcome of the EPA's new proposal would be a situation where legacy car makers are far away from meeting MPG requirements of their fleets, which would lead to paying fines and therefore further losses, which we'll talk about in a few moments. Number 3. Job-killing strategy. Although United Auto Workers, which represent nearly 150,000 workers at the Detroit 3, have endorsed Biden for re-election, they're not so happy with the government's recent moves, with even harder push for electrification. According to them, such an intense drive for EVs puts jobs at risk. A group representing major automakers urged the Biden administration to make significant changes to the proposed rules for several reasons. First of all, we've had a situation where Ford and GM were forced to postpone some of the EV investments, which led to the massive relocation of workers to different plants. For example, Ford's decision to cut production of the F-150 Lightning by half affected 1,400 workers. Half of them have already been moved to the nearby Michigan assembly plant for the production of gas-powered Bronco and Ranger models, while the other half still waits to be shifted to different jobs. That's just one failed EV plant, so you can imagine the scale of potential problems in the case of rapid electrification the current administration has been advocating for. Some see the upcoming elections as the main reason for such aggressive electrification, and while we're speaking about elections, it's worth mentioning that Trump has already branded Biden's policy as a job-killing hoax and a capitulation to China. On the other hand, companies like Stellantis have been criticizing the EPA and the current administration for completely ignoring plug-in hybrids and the benefits of this technology. This company already developed a couple of plug-in hybrid versions of its trucks and large SUVs, and it is part of the group of car makers that suggest a slower pace and more rational electrification that would include hybrid and plug-in hybrid technologies and make the transition easier. Stellantis CEO Carlos Tavares already told the press that you'll have a bloodbath, pointing out the fact that legacy automakers already struggle to absorb high EV investment and production costs. Number 2. Fines that measure in billions. Things with the EPA's new proposal are pretty clear. Those automakers unable to meet new standards in terms of average fleet fuel economy and CO2 emissions will have to pay massive fines to remain in the business. According to the Alliance for Automotive Innovation, which represents various major car makers such as GM, Toyota, Hyundai, Volkswagen, etc., the average fuel economy proposal exceeds maximum feasibility, so projections are that manufacturers will have to pay over $14 billion in non-compliance penalties between 2027 and 2032. For legacy car makers, that's yet another layer of electrification problems they've been dealing with lately. These companies already struggle a lot with new electric models due to significant development and production costs. Simply said, legacy car makers still don't know how to make electric cars profitable. They're losing money on every EV they sell, and American legacy car makers are particularly vulnerable with their lack of ability to optimize production process. Because of these losses, Ford already stated that it'll postpone some of the future EV prospects worth $12 billion, while GM delayed production of its all-electric pickups, new electric drive unit, etc. The new EPA proposal can only make things worse because it inevitably leads not just to the increase of money-losing EVs, but also to decrease in production of internal combustion-powered cars, those cars that are currently making profit and funding development of electric cars. It's kind of a vicious cycle, and with new stricter rules, we really don't see how legacy car makers will be able to get out of it. Number 1. Americans don't want EVs. All these problems we just talked about do exist and they're real, but they're nothing compared to this one. Car makers could possibly overcome financial difficulties and other challenges related to EV development, but in a free market country like America, we really don't see how government, car makers, or any other organization could impact on the demand. EVs have been growing at a fast pace over the last few years, but that's mainly because of the so-called early adopters. Now, the time has come for the middle class to embrace EVs, but things appear to be significantly different. Because the average American buyer doesn't want to own an EV for many reasons. Of course, there's the price, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. EV owning issues extend way beyond and refer to things like range anxiety, undeveloped charging infrastructure, and lower reliability ratings. Even though you usually hear how EVs are cheaper to run, they really are not. They cost more to insure, they cost way more to repair, and public charging stations are often as expensive as gasoline, not to mention the lack of convenience that comes with an electric car. And above all, battery electric vehicles don't work well under heavy exploitation. They can't tow as much as gasoline, and especially diesel-powered counterparts, not to mention that the claimed range drops significantly when towing or hauling. The battery electric technology is improving, but it's still miles away from being adequate for use in pickups. And if you consider that majority of Americans prefer trucks and large SUVs, we don't see how this overambitious plan could work in the near future. Thanks for watching and see you next time.